Bismillah. I just wanted to close by saying that the theory that we have when it comes to rectifying our problems, like these are realities. You know what I mean? Everything that we mentioned, we all mentioned, different aspects that are essentially fundamental and necessary for everybody to gain success, like a tawheed and its establishment. And yeah, I understand the Quran and the Sunnah according to the way of the Salaf and establishing it like that, right? Sincerely. And we ask that Allah gives us certainty and sincerity and consistency and istiqamah. And those theoretical concepts that have to be applied are real, and that's really where our success lies. I do think, however, that and there's ulama who have mentioned this in their discussions, when you talk to Mashaykh, there are some unique and specific characteristics that we have to deal with here in the West. And I think not taking that into consideration and approaching it properly, again, none of it is free or void of the obligation of establishing Tawheed, establishing the Quran and Sunnah, as the Salaf did. This is without a doubt clearly the solution to every problem. And to deviate from that one bit is always going to result in, a failure. But at the same time, look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he told Mu'adh ibn Jabal, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, let him know the kind of people he was going to, right? He let him know you're going to people from the people of the book. So that the first thing you call them to be, and you wahidullah, that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Now, if you notice, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he told Mu'adh, the first thing that he should call the people to was Tawheed. That calling people to Tawheed, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will call anyone, when it sent Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and those people who made al-Hijrat al-Ula, they had the same instructions. They had the same concept. When they got to al-Habasha, they called the people to Tawheed. And anytime sent anyone, anywhere, anybody when as a representative of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they always bear that same concept of Tawheed, right? But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam still let Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu know what kind of people he was dealing with, because each constituency is different and they have different things you got to pay attention to. Doesn't mean the dawah is going to change. Doesn't mean that what's going to save them is going to change. It means that they may have some specific issues that have to be taken into consideration while dealing with them. So when we look at what the ulama have advised us regarding this point, like Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he mentioned, I remember he mentioned three things. It may be a fourth, and if so, the brothers can add to it. But I remember him mentioning clearly three things that a da'i has to know. He said the first thing he has to have knowledge of, the thing that he's calling to. Ilmu ma yad'u ilayh. He has to have knowledge. So when it comes to Tawheed, according to the Quran and Sunnah, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to understand Tawheed, you have to understand the Quran, you have to understand Sunnah. So when you call to them, with basira, right? With clarity and with clear, sound knowledge. Next thing he mentioned, he said you have to have, and this may not be in order, but I remember him mentioning another thing you have to have is kayfiyat to dawah, how dawah is given, the mannerism that is given. For example, that your dawah is consistent with your character, the level of patience you have to have, avoiding being insulting, making things difficult. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, yassiru wa la tu'assiru, bashiru wa la tunathiru. Make things easy, don't make things difficult. Give glad tidings, don't tell people things going to depress them and run them away, right? So he has to have knowledge of how to get down. And he mentioned, and this is very significant, he has to have knowledge of hal al-mad'u, the circumstances that the people are in. So in every community that we deal with, and if we specifically talking about trying to help the Muslims develop and rehabilitate themselves, these communities are different. For the brothers who are in cities like when I was in New York, for the time I was the imam there, I realized that whether we want to, the sad thing about it is that the communities are very segregated. Okay, and even the people of the Sunnah, they have a level of segregation that people don't want to deal with it because it's heartbreaking, and it's easier for us to just ignore it, and also because being segregated and having these weird isolated issues, you know, it's disheartening because, as Abdul Hafid said, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, you know, we, the people of the Sunnah, are not really busying themselves with issues of nationalism, colorism, so on and so forth. The sad reality is, what I've seen, and this is, I mean, my experience is very little compared to my elders, such as you brothers, like Abdul Hafiz and Abu Zainab, Hafidhakumullah. But what I've seen in my little experience is that the brothers, and even the people, the Salafis that I know, other nationalities, their general concern for the Muslims are there. And the accommodation for the Muslims in general within the community is there. But their brothers do have there are certain things that they deal with, that each people deal with within their community, right? As a tribal member or as a countryman. It's not necessarily racially based, but the circumstances are a little bit different. And they just, by default of who they are, they know how to cater to those issues and deal with those issues better than somebody on the outside would. That's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, Allah is the one that made us into shu'ub and qaba'il. So us being from, this person being from this tribe, or this person being from this particular group of people, that doesn't necessarily, you know, mean that us as people who are not from that tribe or aren't from that same nationality, from that same background, should be excluded from anything in terms of the brotherhood now Islamic development. But it does clearly imply that there may be some khasa'is that particular community, and I mean community meaning the people who grew up in that region and understand that region, there are certain things that they're going to understand and know how to treat specifically, right? That they may know that thing better than me. So if I come from, let's say, for example, a community where the people deal with, like in certain parts of the Muslim world, I believe we discussed this before in another discussion, different platform, same platform, but different time. There are some people who, within their culture, these are some of the people who Sunnah get affected by this. They're not practicing it, but it's still something that sadly they have to deal with in their community, where certain people are known as, this person is a Sayyid, right? And he's some exclusive individual in his community because his lineage traced back to this person, allegedly traced back to this companion or this person or that person. So because of that, he has a different social status. Because of that, the people in the town or in the area may treat him a particular way. That's an ailment, right? That's something for, as a one brother told me, he said he was this in total disagreement because the brother loved the Sunnah and so on and so forth. He just said, look, honestly, it's a sad thing. He said, but if I come in the room because of who my tribe is, he said, according to our practices, people are not supposed to sit on chairs if I sit on a chair. When I come in the room, if I sit on a chair, everybody's supposed to sit on the floor because of my social status. He said, I'm not in agreement with this. He said, but that's something that my people deal with. Now, me being somebody from the United States, in the city, we don't have that. We have a different struggle. That's not something that protect the community that I come from, in terms of my tribe, in terms of my background, that's not something we have to deal with. That's germane to him and to his people. Now, when it comes to combating that issue, his knowledge of those issues and how to treat that ailment within his community is going to be way more superior than mine. A Spanish brother told me one time, he looked me in my face and said, he said, Ismail, the part of Latin America that I'm from, he said, it doesn't make a difference what you come with, how thorough you are, how articulate your dawah may be. My people, and it didn't sound like he was praising this. It was more, it sounded like it frustrated him. Nonetheless, he said, from what I know of my people, they'll never accept you coming in there giving them dawah. He said, because you don't look like them. Now, I'm not, again, this is what he told me. So I'm like, so his thing was, listen, people from my community and my ethnic background, we have to learn the Sunnah because these people are so ignorant. They're not even going to listen to you if you come there with brown skin and I'm Hispanic and I look a particular way, this place where I'm from, they're not going to take nothing from nobody. We've been trying to give dawah. He's a very nationalistic. That's an ailment within this community. He knows how to treat that ailment better than me. If I were to get in the plane and go to his country and try to deal with that ailment, Allah knows best. And with tawfiq min Allah, Allah knows best. He may be able to deal with those people a little bit better because he understands them. So we have issues within our community, and it's just my opinion. We have issues within our community where we live at, where we grow up, dealing with people. Let's see, if we look at some of the negative aspects of our community, people are drunk off of, Christianity. People are drunk off of pictures of who they believe is Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. There are people who are literally drunk off of alcohol and intoxicated and inebriated from, due to drugs and alcohol. A lot of people in my generation come from broken homes. There's a lot of different ailments that somebody, because I've seen brothers come into communities and they just don't understand. And this is not even, unique to color or what we're talking about. Somebody grew up in the suburbs, got the same complexion, same whatever, hair texture, whatever it is that this person has. But because he's been isolated, he grew up in the suburbs, he had both parents, he never experienced anything in the street and so on and so forth. Then he comes to the inner city and tries to deal with those issues. A brother may advise a person, let's say marriage counsel, for example. You got a brother, he just married a sister. Mashallah, the sister prays, she fasts, she's trying to get herself together, but she's coming from a different background. She's a new Muslim, baby Muslim 2 years, and she's steadily trying to develop. But let's say the girl has a problem where, she watches TV watches certain programs on her phone. They already have a child, 2 children together. The brother sees his woman developing and growing and gradually getting away from this nonsense. Okay, but she still had this little thing where she may watch some little foolishness on TV that she shouldn't watch on her phone. A brother asked one time, I saw a brother ask, and he asked the brother, who, mashallah, Salafi, person we respect, love, student knowledge. He didn't really understand like where these people are coming from and the kind of progress the sister had made prior to. So the brother said, well, my wife, sometimes she asks me, she requests that I take her to the movies. And we already know that that's not something that we approve of or appreciate. But because the sister had actually made a lot of progress from where she was prior to where she was at that moment. Now to us, we look like, okay, she came from, being in clubs, getting drunk, dancing, partying, hanging out, to now she's covered, she's praying, she's fasting, she's taking care of her husband. But that part of her still exists. So she requested her husband to take her to the movies. The husband didn't take her. And inshallah, my husnul dhan is that the husband, perhaps he explained to her, look, sis, we trying to get away from that, blah, 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 blah. And she took it. But before we get to that point, she asked one of the students of knowledge again, who doesn't really, in my opinion, I know the brother, he doesn't really totally get the narrative and understand exactly how to deal with some of these little, idiosyncrasies that we have within our communities here in the West and urban communities in America. He said, just like this, at a lecture full of people, full of reverts, brand new Muslims, dudes who probably memorized 3 surahs. So now he think, and I'm Mufti Shaykh al-Islam Allama, right? He said that in the room. The brother got a mic and said, if that was me, I would say, Sister Salam Alaikum, and I would divorce her. So my thing is, when you make a statement like that, it to him, maybe where he's from and maybe where he's been and his experiences, that would be such she would have had to have dropped and plummeted so much as a person to request from her husband to take her to the movies that it makes sense where he's from that he was really bothered like that. But for us, it's like, okay, that's bad, but I know where my wife, where she came and where she's at now. So I'm not going to approve of it, but I'm going to deal with a different kind of way because she made so much progress. Somebody from the outside who doesn't understand our narrative here in the country, in the urban community, or those brothers over there in China, or those brothers over there in Russia. You look with the Russian brothers and you look at they're so shell-shocked, a lot of them. They've been affected by so many different, it was such an aggressive environment, war and so on and so forth. You'll find
the Chechen brothers.
Yeah, brother, just that whole Chechen environment, those sub areas of Russia. When you sit down and you talk to some of them, the Salafi ones, the ones that are really educated, that's one group. But the ones that may be Salafi, they're Salafi, but they're not really, they haven't been cultivated all the way. They're not straight up like Takfiri Khariji. Some of them are, sadly, but some of them, they're a little too militant. So they're not thinking about harming anybody, anything like that. But it's just their approach is a lot more aggressive. It's a lot more militant sometimes. Again, they're not crazy. They're not politically motivated. They're not running around trying to harm anybody, nothing like that. But it's just you hear that their approach and the way they talk is a little too aggressive. if I were to say on this guy, يعني كأنه تأثر بالخروج وبالخوارج وكذا, and we need to leave him alone, that's a little crazy. But I might get weirded out and uncomfortable because, like, what do you like? Why do you act like that? Why does it? I hear like the tone of some, something like this militant behavior. Why does it sound like that? But another Salafi brother, educated from that community, will be like, listen, I know why it's like that. You know what I mean? I know the things that we experience, the way we grow up, it affects us differently. So he knows how to deal with it. So everybody in their community has to be intelligent enough to know and to find the balance between, catering to some of the specific and unique needs of your folks, the people you grow up with, the people that's in your village or your town or your city, right? Your age group even, right? And the ailments within that community and how to fix them. And, being nationalistic and looking at it like you have an agenda that's based off your complexion or based off your nationality, and so on and so forth. I think that we got to find a balance. In my opinion, going to either extreme will harm us. If we try to pretend and act like, it's okay for us to unite, or it's okay for us to have an agenda based off our ethnicity or our national origin and so on and so forth, that's going to be one harm, and that's going to mess us up one way. And if we try to, pretend and act as if us being from a particular community and understanding our constituency and understanding and taking into consideration that they do have certain elements and certain issues that, yes, we deal with the Quran and the Sunnah and Tawheed in general, but there are going to be some vices, there are going to be some problems that another person from outside of this community, they're not going to be able to detect it. I've seen so many situations where brothers, they don't know how to deal with it. And the sad part about it is all these other communities, they're dealing with their issues. The brothers that are coming to the United States and don't have, papers, there's a whole, these communities,
it's my, I can give
immigration.
I can give you a simple example of what you just said. I was at Mashal Movement. Farid Abdullah was there, and there was a bunch of other brothers there too, right? Now keep in mind, Farid Abdullah is from the Bahamas, born and raised in the Bahamas. So there was a young dude that had just accepted Islam, and like I said, just accepted Islam, meaning when he walked in the masjid, he had on blue khakis, he was sagging, blue Chuck Taylors, gray T-shirt, blue bandana rag tied around his head. So he was tattoos. So he was fresh in Islam, and he was dressed crip crazy. That's how we termed that back then, right? So he's in the masjid, and we're all talking, and he says this. As he's talking, he says, yeah. Kada wa kada wa kada. On my mama, kada wa kada wa kada. And he kept talking, right? Now, we all know, because when he was talking, it missed the brothers, but I heard it.
Right.
I said, so as soon as I heard it, I stopped him. I said, listen, we don't do that. We don't swear by our mothers or anyone else. We only swear to Allah, by Allah, But so Farid asked me, he swore by other than Allah. What did he say? I said that when he used the term on my mama, that's what he was doing. He was swearing by his mother. And so that's what I'm giving that example to illustrate what you're saying.
Right.
This was something that was a cultural expression amongst us that Farid didn't catch.
Right.
And then Farid told me about another time that was like that, right? He told me about a story where he said that some guy walked, a Kafir walked up on him in the community. Yeah, man, you heard about that cat that got killed last night? And Farid was like, he understood it linguistically. So he said the guy just kept talking about it and talking. And yeah. Kept talking. So Farid said he started to get this understanding, like, why are you so emotional over a cat? And he said he didn't realize the dude was talking about a human being until the guy said he still had a cigarette in his mouth. He said, the guy said that. He said he looked at the guy and said, "You're talking about a human being?" So he did.
And this is, these are the things that, that have to be taken into consideration without going to the extreme.